Hello and welcome to another video brought to you by SSIS. In this video, we will cover how to call various Google APIs using SSIS products such as SSIS PowerPack or ODBC drivers, which is part of ODBC PowerPack product. Even though we explicitly going to show you SSIS product in this video, but the techniques listed are very well applicable to other approaches even though you are not using SSIS products. So we encourage you to watch this entire video all the way end, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to get notification whenever we upload similar videos. So let's get started. This video is divided into 5 parts. In first part, we will cover basic introduction about calling Google APIs, and then we will explicitly cover how to call Google Drive APIs for performing various file related operations in Google Drive, such as create new file, read list of files, upload file to Google Drive, download Google file, delete Google Drive file, and so on. We will also show you brief introduction on ODBC drivers. So if you are not using SSIS as your primary ETL tool, you can use our other product called ODBC PowerPack, which integrates into pretty much any BI or programming language, BI tools or programming languages out there, because most of these tools out there in the market, they support ODBC standard. We will use Excel as our primary tool to demo how to use ODBC drivers. So that's all about first part. Then in the second part, we will cover Google Sheet APIs, which includes like how to create Google spreadsheet using API calls. Then we will show you how to read-write data into Google Sheet. And in the third part, we will cover how to call Google Calendar API, which includes how to read-write Google events, calendar events. And on the fourth part, we will cover YouTube API, which includes how to upload video to YouTube channel, how to delete video from YouTube channel, how to read actually your analytics data from YouTube. So all this is done without doing any coding. So that would be exciting to see how you can avoid extensive programming and just use drag and drop approach to automate lots of different workflows by calling Google API. So let's get started. So we assume in order to try all these things, you first have downloaded our SSIS PowerPack product. If SSIS is not your ETL tool, then you can use our ODBC PowerPack product, zapsys.com/products/ODBC PowerPack. Okay, so you can download free trial from here, and you can see these products include many other drivers, and it integrates with many popular BI tools out there, also some programming languages. But we will focus mostly on SSIS PowerPack for now. So make sure you first have a Visual Studio and then SSDT, and then you download this product. Okay, so let's get started. So in this demo, we will cover how to use our inbuilt OAuth app, so you don't have to go through lots of extra steps. Okay, so this is a sample package we have created, and you can see it is using default OAuth app, right? So I will show you quickly how to set up this and how to authenticate using the inbuilt app we provide. So for example, this is just the first step where we are trying to upload file to Google Drive API, right? And these are the scopes we're going to cover in this particular demo. So let's just click on the SSIS toolbox. If you don't see toolbox, you can click this little icon, or you can right click and just show SSIS toolbox that way. Okay, all right, once you have toolbox visible, you can drag REST API task which we already did here. Okay, and when you double click it, you can see various access modes. We have selected URL from connection mode, and then you can create new OAuth connection manager. Okay, so as soon as you create new OAuth connection manager, you will see something like this. Here, make sure you select Google as your provider, and you have two options here. Okay, we're going to talk both options briefly. If you don't want to go through the second option, which we recommend, then you can always choose the first option, the default app. Okay, when you use default app, you don't have to create your own Google API project or go through some steps, right? So that saves you some time and it's ease of use. But if you're concerned about some of the security thing, or if you're concerned about the sharing API call limit daily, then you can use your own app. Okay, or either way is fine. It's always you going to take control of your own data. Nothing is shared with ZappSIS. Okay, so let's just first start with some of the basic settings, right? So very first thing you have to do is you have to supply the scopes, and scope is like which permissions you want to grant to when we actually create these tokens, right? So each set of tokens comes with a set of permissions, and the scope is nothing but the permissions. Every API call you make to Google needs some sort of a permission from you, right? And you have to explicitly say these are the permissions I want to grant to this API call, right? So as we talked a little bit, like, okay, in this video we're going to use different scopes. Okay, so for example, if you're calling Drive APIs, then you might use these scopes, right? And each API call may use more or less scope, so you have to explicitly read our API documentation and figure out which scopes are necessary, right? So for example, this is just a sample API call to delete video from YouTube channel, right? And Google lists like which scopes are needed here, right? So similar, they might be mentioning about the Drive API or Spreadsheet API. So always make sure which scopes are needed, right? Is it a read only, read write, whatnot? So anyway, that's just a basic idea about what is scope. So in our example, let's just go back, and we have listed lots of scopes. If you don't want to type by hand, you can select scopes using our inbuilt browser. Okay, it comes with many scopes, and sometimes not all the scopes are listed here. Then you have to manually type it in this text box. Okay, all right, so that's about scopes. Now once you do that, you click generate token, you select your account, and sometimes you may get this type of warnings, or there might be other error. Then you simply close the window and you just use the default browser method. Okay, so here we say, hey, yes, I'm going to use this account to authenticate. You can put your password, and then you might see warning like this sometimes, depending on which app you are using and which API you have you have used this different scopes in that permission, right? It may be authorized, may not be authorized, and so you just say, hey, I am okay to proceed, I trust ZappSIS, and it will show various scopes you are requesting, various permissions you are requesting. Click allow, and there might be a little code here. So if you are using Chrome browser, you may not need to copy this, but if you are using some other browser, it's not automatically copied back to the app. So you go back to the app, click cancel, and say yes, I want to manually paste the code, and you may see pop up like this. Just paste the code, and that's it. So token is generated. It's asking you to back up this token somewhere. Okay, I can say just back it up. Yep, and that's it. So when you click test, it should go green. All right, so that's about how to generate token, right? And you can see in the URL your app ID, your client ID is listed, which scopes you are actually requesting. All this should be listed here, right? So let's see the state. Okay, all right, so that's about how to generate a token using default app, right? Now what if you don't want to use default app, right? In that case you have to actually create your own project. Okay, and for that you have to go to console.developers.google.com. Once you go there, you will see little drop down at the top or somewhere it says create new project. Once you create a new project, you can click it, and then you can enable or disable some APIs. For example, on this project, you will see bunch of APIs. If they are not listed, you can just search for your API you like to call, right? And you can simply say, hey, enable API, right? So for example, we have enabled YouTube API and Google Drive API, right? So you can just look at that. There is a little checkbox says API is enabled. Okay, once API is enabled, you have to create OAuth consent screen. Okay, and we have configured OAuth consent screen, right? So after that you have to create credentials, and for calling APIs from SSIS Power Pack or ODBC Power Pack, you need to create OAuth 2.0 credentials. Okay, so we created new credentials, and it says OAuth ClientID, right? And here you can say desktop app, right? And then create, right? Once you do that, it will actually give you client ID and client secret, which you can copy and put it back to your app, right? You basically have to put it here, client ID and client secret. Okay, so that's how to use your own app rather than default app. Okay, so there are two different approach. Either way, it's fine. Whatever makes you happy, you can choose it. Okay, so now let's go back and actually call some APIs. So first thing, let's just upload a file to Google Drive. Okay, now we have our Google Drive open here. Okay, some files are already there, but we will upload a new file to Google Drive using drag and drop method. So you just drag a REST API task, just how we did, configure your OAuth connection manager. Now each API call needs to have its own little API URL, right? So if you're not sure, I mean, you can always learn more by saying, hey, call Google Drive API upload, something like this, right? And you see it will show you documentation about calling Google API. And there are different sections, samples, reference, right? So you can click on reference and you can learn more about the various API calls, whatnot. So this is about Drive API, and we can say create. So okay, so basically that's about the create call, right? So yeah, just refer to the different API, and there is also try this API. You can always create your own API request and execute and see how it looks like. Okay, so for this, let's just go back. To upload a file, you need to call this API endpoint. Okay, we are calling v3 API question mark upload type equal to media. Okay, that should be like that. Then you select the post method, request method is post, and here is very interesting part here. So SSIS supports something called file upload and multi-part method. So if you just uncheck and check, you will see how different multi-part methods can be executed, right? We are using this raw upload method, right? In that case, you just have to prefix your file path with the @ symbol, and it will automatically convert that whole thing into binary data when you upload it. Okay, just keep things default. Content type we supplied like this. Okay, So that's pretty much it. If you're not sure about content type, leave it default, because it might detect it based on the extension. Okay, so let's do that first thing. Now once you upload the file, it won't actually set the file name and everything, right? So it might appear as a like default file name in Google Drive, or no file name supplied, right? After that you have to call a second API. Okay, so first API call is upload file data. On the response tab, we basically have to extract $.id from the response, which is your file ID, and save that ID into some variable. This is your file ID, newly created file ID. We are actually logging that file ID using some logging task here. Okay, simply just insert variable, log your file ID like that. It's just useful to see at runtime what is the ID, right? But here is the second call. In this second call, we are setting the actual file name, right? Whatever the file we uploaded, we want to give some name. Okay, we want to give some description, and we want to explicitly set the MIME type. This MIME type is interesting. It basically gives you gives Google indication that what type of file is this, right? And based on the MIME type, Google might show you various right-click options. It may show you CSV file preview and all those things. So pick this MIME type correctly, so you can get some intelligence in Google Drive. All right, but most important, our name and title. That's it. This is a JSON format, so you basically have to explicitly say this is JSON format in the content type, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, when you call this API, it will set the file name and other metadata. So let's just execute. We check our Google Drive again. So there is no invoice file here. Now let's execute it. So sometimes your SSIS project might need some compilation, so it's gonna open up some files and do like that. So let's see, in a second it should start executing our actual workflow. Okay, so yep, so two-step process executed. We uploaded the binary data to file, then we named the file, and now let's go back to our Google Drive and refresh. And there you go, our invoices.csv file is uploaded, and if you double click, actually you will see it will understand that it's a CSV file, so it has to show in the grid like this. So this is our data, right? So that's our first step, how to upload a file, and then you can see file details here. Okay, right, and we can see that open in the sheet. So here's the file ID. Basically in the URL, if you are not sure what is your file ID, you can always look at the URL, right? So that's our file ID. Okay, we are just closing it for now. All right, and let's go back to our app. So now let's say we want to download this file, right? We just uploaded the file. What about download? To download the file, you simply call this /files endpoint, and then supply the file ID, and then question mark, then alt equal to media. Request method is get, and that's it. After that, you basically go to response setting tab, check this option, save response content into some local file. Now if your file data is binary, make sure you check this option, treat response as binary, because otherwise it might change some encoding of your file and treat that file as a text file. Okay, we know that and this means there is no alteration needed. Download all the bytes as is without any encoding setting. Okay. All right, so let's just, if you can go to variables, see we have defined some variables. Now if we know our file ID, we can put it here, and let's just try to download the file. Okay, so it failed, and you can see why it failed. It might be the file might not exist or something else, right? So you can always copy message. We wanted to show this error so you understand how to fix the error, right? Okay, so only file with binary content can be downloaded, right? So now this is a spreadsheet, that's why probably it's not liking it, right? So let's just make sure what is our actually file ID. Okay, so in order to do that, we have another API call get Google file list. Okay, or you can go back to this file and say there is a property open with preview, open in new window. Okay, so yep, that's where you find the actual file ID. It may be different than opening in the spreadsheet. Okay, so make sure you use that file ID. All right, let's go back and then use that file ID. Okay, so see, this is a significantly different file ID. Now if I execute again, voila, so file downloaded, and you can see it downloaded to local folder somewhere, right? So we can actually open that folder, files, and then our downloaded file right here. Okay, and you can just see it's a CSV file. All right, so that's how you download the file, right? Now let's look at how to actually read the file and parse it in rows and columns, because sometimes it's needed to load that file into database or somewhere, right? So SSIS provides lots of different components. So depending on what is the format of your file, we support JSON, CSV, or XML connectors, which can read from API URLs using OAuth or other HTTP connection methods. So yeah, if you first drag your CSV connector, so let's just minimize this. So if you look at the CSV source, JSON source, and we have XML source, right? So this file is CSV format, so we're going to drag CSV source, right, and configure it with this URL. Make sure it's correct ID. We are using this variable placeholder method to use that ID dynamically at runtime, right? So you can hard code that ID if you want, but you can always use whatever ID you want using this method. Right, now we have selected the connection manager we created earlier, use credentials, get method, and that's it. All the settings are default, comma separated file. If you click preview, it's gonna show a little preview like this, file preview. Okay, so this is the way you can actually read data without downloading anything on your local disk. Okay, all right, so that's all about reading file, and I mean, you execute it, it will show you how to load data into some of your destination. Your destination could be anything like a SQL server, Oracle, MySQL, right? So 2000 records transferred. Okay, now how to get a list of files. So basically this is the API URL, googleapi.com/drive/v3/files. Same thing what we did before, no change. Here is the interesting part. To get the file list, you have to select filter, and we are using JSON source, by the way, because the Google API response is JSON response. Okay, so here you have to select the array. You can see that all the file listing is under this array, and that's it. You're gonna get an ID, name, MIME type, all the things. And if you click preview, just going on my other screen, you can see we get all the file IDs, file names, and whatnot. So this is useful in many scenarios if you want to get the list of files. Now what we are doing here is we are actually storing this records into some local variable, which is object type. Okay, using record set destination, Microsoft provides a inbuilt record set destination. So just find out that should be in the other destination, probably record set destination. Okay, and this is very handy if you are doing like a looping scenario for each loop, right? So this is what it is. We are selecting all the input columns we want, and that's it. So once you have that data into record set variable, you can actually use for each loop under containers to loop through various properties. ADO enumerator, variable name, that's it. And then under variable mappings, you have to choose which property go to which variable. Okay, and you can use some logging task, like a logging task we have already here. That's it. And the last thing, we're going to show you how to delete file from Google Drive. So to delete file, we're going to call the same URL again with the file ID we created and call it delete option, right? So let's just execute. We already supplied the file ID, invoice file ID, and execute. There you go. So if you go back, and we can see the progress, that API has been called. Now we can go back, we go to our Google Drive again. Okay, so you see the invoice is still there, but if you refresh, it should go away because we just deleted it, right? Okay, it's still not gone. Open today. So let's confirm what is going on. Okay, so let me open it and just confirm this is the same ID. Alright, so 1G, it might be different ID, different files. So let's see, copy this file. Okay, it looks different file ID. So let me just confirm. Okay. Alright, so delete call succeeded. Let's just confirm one more time. Alright, there you go. So invoice file is deleted. Now let's look at how to upload media file to your photo library. Okay, so here is our photo library, photos.google.com, and we want to upload one image file to our photo library. So here is the API call you have to configure: photos library.googleapis.com/v1/uploads, right? Method is post, and your file path, it has to be image file, PNG, JPEG, like that, and prefix your file path with @ and check this option. Okay, and then in the headers, basically you have to configure a few headers. So let me just pull up my little pop-up here. Okay, so there are these are the 2 to 3 headers. I think this header is optional, but these two you have to supply: content type and protocol, right? Okay. So refer to their API documentation for more info. Alright, once you do that, uh, you have to extract one more thing on the response tab. Okay, so by default, I mean, you cannot name your file once you in the same API call, right? So after you upload, you need to set your file name, and for that, here's how you can do. Make sure you check this option, save response content to some variable. This will be some sort of a token which we will use in the next step. And once you get that token, the next step, you have to call these API URL. Again, refer to API documentation. So let's see, I can open up a little pop-up here. Basically, there is URL, photo libraries, googleapis.com/v1 media items, I capital, and batch create C capital here. Okay, and in between there is a colon. So yep, that's the URL, and in the body, again, you have to refer to the API, which elements are allowed. We basically saying new media items in the rectangle bracket, and then you say description of this file is this, and then under simple media item, curly braces, your file name and your upload token. So our upload token is coming from variable from the previous step. Okay, and this is the file name we want to give, right? So that's it. So let's just try to run this step and see what happens. Execute container. It's going to upload our image file to photo library, and then once it's done, we can refresh this. Alright, so let's just refresh it. There you go. So our new file has been uploaded. So this is all about how to upload media file to Google Photo Library using drag and drop approach. So far we have talked about how to call various Google APIs using SSIS Power Pack, right? Now we will show you briefly how to use similar techniques using ODBC Power Pack product, right? So for that, we assume you have installed SSIS ODBC Power Pack from this URL we mentioned earlier. Okay, once you do that, you can open up ODBC console. Like, you just type ODBC, and let's just use 64-bit for now. Create a new ODBC connection, right? You can pick the driver you want. So if Google APIs are JSON drivers, so you just pick that. Okay, and you create a new API connection here, right? So let's just open up we already created one connection here. So for example, we want to list the Google Drive files, right? For that we have used this little URL, and here you select the OAuth connection manager, and same user interface we saw in SSIS. You define scopes, select your app, either custom app or default app, and generate a token, right? Once you do that, you will get your access token and refresh token. Alright, so let's just go to and once you do that, you can go to preview tab. Here you have a table drop down. So if your API call succeed, you will see list of tables here, right? And that's it. Now you click preview data, you get some data here, right? So that's how you basically configure your DSN, ODBC DSN. And sometimes here you have a filter. You can supply filter as well, so you don't have to know the table name. You simply select from which array you want to extract your data, right? Yep. And if you have a filter defined, then you can simply say select star from $. Okay, and it's the same thing. So either go by the table name from the drop down and alias the way you want, or use select star from. Okay, alrighty, good deal. So let's just cancel this, and let's try to import this data into Excel, right? So I'm going to use from Microsoft Query option. Okay, So on the next screen I have some table. So in that Microsoft query option you can see our Google API demo. Click OK. In a second it will show a little pop-up. So we want to extract this table. And voila. So all our Google API data has been extracted into ODBC compliant app like Excel. You can do the similar technique with Power BI, Informatica, SSRS, also supported by our drivers. So check our blog post about various app integration scenarios and see how you can leverage our ODBC products to call APIs without any coding. Okay. Alrighty, so that's it. That was the introduction about how to call Google Drive API and other API like a media API using SSIS SSIS PowerPack product and ODBC PowerPack product. Thank you for watching. Welcome to part 2 of our video series, how to call Google API using SSIS PowerPack and ODBC PowerPack products. In our previous part, we saw how to call Google Drive APIs and how to configure OAuth connection manager, obtain client ID, client secret, also how to obtain access token and refresh token, right? So now let's continue and just see how to call Google Spreadsheet API in this video. Okay, so basically what we will cover is various operations of Google Spreadsheet, like a read, write, create spreadsheet, delete spreadsheet, without doing any coding using SSIS PowerPack. Okay, so let's get started. So here we have our SSIS toolbox. Just like previous video, we have all the connection manager configured. Okay, so now if you double click here, we have configured our REST API task to call this API call, which is post request method, and there is a body here. So basically when you want to create a spreadsheet, you have to supply title and sheet names, right? Like a tab names under this sheet node. This is optional, so you can completely skip this whole thing and just supply title of your spreadsheet, right? So we're just gonna keep default. Once you're done with that part of configuration, you have to select this content type, and that's it. There is no need for extra header here. On the response setting tab, you have to select JSON response type, and here is our $.spreadsheet ID, where I is capital. Okay, so what this does, basically out of your whole JSON response, it grabs only spreadsheet ID, which we can use later on this workflow. You save that into variable, and let's call that variable file ID. Okay, you can create new variable or pick the existing one. Then we can log it, just to get that ID somewhere. This is optional step. And then if you really want to invoke delete spreadsheet call, you can call delete, use that variable in the URL to make it dynamic, and here is our request method delete. So that's how you can delete spreadsheet. Okay, so let's just run this whole workflow. We're going to create a spreadsheet, then we're going to read and write. Okay, so I'm going to put some breakpoints here. Okay, and then we'll explain you how we did all this. Okay, so let's just run it. Before I do that, let me just make sure there's nothing in my drive. Okay, so there is no spreadsheet created right now. Okay, so execute. So very first call will create a spreadsheet, set up some metadata like a name, title, description, right? And once that's done, we will execute the write it Google spreadsheet call. Okay, so we will explain each of this tab in depth after this. So let's see. So spreadsheet got created, some file ID got logged. Okay, all right, so here is our new sheet ID. Now if we refresh it here, there should be a blank spreadsheet. Okay, there is a blank spreadsheet. There is no data in this spreadsheet. Okay, let's open it. Alright, so there is no data here right now. Now let's go to our flow and continue the workflow. So the breakpoint is hit here in the right. Now we continue and it should write some data. I will explain you what is all this about. Okay, so like data has been written, and there you go. So our spreadsheet got some data here. Okay, all right, so that was about how to read and write. Okay, now let's look at each step. So we already explained you how to create a spreadsheet, get the file ID back. Now let's look at how to read data. Okay, so here's some sample URL we are using to read data. This is a public spreadsheet ID. And if you can refer our blog post, it explains you how to go to that publicly created spreadsheet. This is a sample provided by Google. So there are three ways you can actually read data. You can actually supply the tab name and then the range from where you want to read, or you can skip the tab name and just it will take the first tab, and then you can simply say start cell and the end column, or you can say start cell and end cell. Okay, so let's look at our URL here. So we are using the basically tab like this, and we are using start cell and then end column, right? So after that URL is configured, check the credentials and select our OAuth credential we created earlier. Select filter. This is important part. So out of this we're going to select values node. That's where our data is, and then you have to select this transform called column less array transform. Okay, and because my spreadsheet has a first row as a column header, I want that my first row as a column header. If you don't do that, then you have to manually supply the column header. Let's say sometimes spreadsheet does not have column header in the first row, right? So you simply give my column 1, column 2, whatever you want to give your name to your column, right? But in this sheet we know that there is a first row as a column name. So if you do that and just click preview, there you go. So it automatically detected all my column names and the data. You go to columns tab and it automatically detects my data types. If you don't like this data type, because what it does, it scans first 300 rows, and that's how it figures out the rows data types, right? You can tweak it however you want and lock it your change so it doesn't overwrite next time. Okay, so that's about how to extract using JSON source. The JSON source is found here, CS JSON source. That's what we have used. Now we want to push this data into SQL Server or some other destination, right? We have used this inbuilt destination called upsert destination. This is a pretty fast insert destination for if you have to insert or update type of scenario, right? Or you want to bulk delete target records, you can use that upsert destination. We are using this for SQL Server table, so we have created a connection for SQL Server. We are selecting the table here, already created table. If not, you can create new table and tweak the data type if you really don't like that way. Then you have to select the primary key, because it's gonna select based on that insert or update, and that's it. So once you execute this, it should insert data into your target table. So because we ran this whole flow, we should have some data. There you go, right? So that was about how to read data from Google spreadsheet and how to insert into SQL table. Now let's look at the details about how to write to Google spreadsheet, right? So what we have done here, we have a source data, right? Because if you look at our spreadsheet, looks like this. The first row has some header, which is a column titles, and then some data, right? And the last row has some expressions defined like this, right? So we want to do all that using some input API data, right? So this is the way we have done it. If you look at this, it should be put API call, and URL should be like this, and here is how your body should look like, right? So all your row data goes here. Okay, so it's a two-dimensional array, right? First row, second row, third row, like that. And you see the expressions can be defined using this format, double quotes, inside that you have equal, and then you can put your formula, right? So now how do you create this JSON, right? I mean, you can hard code it and you can supply it, but that's not a practical way, right? Because what if you have a data coming from SQL Server and you want to create this way? So for that we have done something like this. We have used JSON generator transform, and you can look it into our toolbox called ZS JSON generation transform. You can add two static elements, because this is my cell range, and this is, I'm writing rows, I'm not writing columns. So you can write vertically or you can write horizontally, right? So if you, this is how we are writing in a row format. Okay, so basically I can say add static element first. I can just type my element name, which is like a range, and then I can put some static value like a sheet 1 exclamation mark A1, something like this, right? This is just a static data, not coming from the upstream column, right? So that I added already. I added two different static elements like that. Then you can add new document array. Okay, now make sure you have selected this single data set array batching mode. Okay, you can batch every 1,000 rows, 10,000 rows, however your API is allowing, right? I don't know, Google spreadsheet allows pretty big range, so that's why we are stuffing all the input rows into one API call, right? If you want to batch it, you can save 1,000 rows at a time in this whole array, right? Okay, so once you add that document array, make sure you select the 2D option here, output as 2D option, and just call it this values. Okay, after that you can add elements and you can select the columns you like to add. So I have selected all these columns and add them underneath it, right? So it real-time preview shows it's two-dimensional array inside array, right? So this is the format, desired format Google expects in their spreadsheet write API call. Once you have that generated, you can send that to web API destination. Okay, again refer to our blog post, and our blog post explains everything about how to read write data. So let me show you. This is the URL about our blog post, and here is the entire blog post about spreadsheet API calls. Okay, so let's go back to here, and let's just talk a little bit about the web API destination. So web API destination can make things dynamic using two different ways. You can select your dynamic URL, body or header from upstream columns as a whole, or you can fragment it, like some of the fragments can be dynamic, right? And those fragments can come from variables or some upstream columns, right? So let's say for this fragment I rely on some user variable, so I can choose that. You can have some fragment coming from like upstream column. In that case you can say columns, and then you can pick your column name here, right? Either way is fine, because our upstream column is the output column like this, so we have selected the whole body like this. Okay, you can have a hard-coded body as well, and you can, so for example, this is my hard-coded body, and if I go to my spreadsheet, let's say I delete this whole thing, right? and if I click test, it should work. It should populate it here, right? As long as my spreadsheet ID and everything is correct. So let's just try that one quickly. So this is my spreadsheet ID. Okay, go back. This is my body, and I'm just hard coding my spreadsheet ID, right? And if I click test, it should go green. See, it returns me some response, say how many cells updated, and there you go. It just puts everything back, right? So that's how you actually use Web API destination to write your data in a bulk mode, right? And there are lots of different options. You can explore it your own and learn more about how to use Web API destination through our blog post. So that was all about how to read, write, and create spreadsheet. Now we haven't shown you how to actually call delete API call, right? So we can take our spreadsheet ID, okay, and let's just go back to our drive. So we're going to just call our delete API call. You can select delete here and then just test. So if delete call works at runtime or design time, you will see something like this, right? Status 200, okay, right? So that's it. So now let's go back, and there you go. Our spreadsheet has been deleted. So that was all about how to call Google Spreadsheet APIs using SSIS Perfect product. In our next video, we will cover YouTube API calls and calendar API calls. So keep watching, and see you in part number 3. Thank you. Welcome to part 3 of how to call Google API using SSIS PowerPack and ODBC PowerPack. In this video, we will particularly cover how to call a calendar API and automate certain tasks. For example, creating events or reading events without doing coding. So let's get started. So I am here in front of my Google Calendar, and my task is I want to create certain events automatically using my ETL workflow, right? So basically I have configured these two data flow. First, I'm creating some sample events in Google Calendar, and then in the second flow I'm trying to read those events. So let's see how to do this one. Okay, so for example, to create some sample events, we have some source data here, and I have just a title, event start and event end date, right? So you can just click here to see actual replacement. I'm using some placeholder function to produce today's date, just to create some random data, right? So basically the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events we want to insert into Google Calendar for today's date. Okay, all right, so here that's my first step. Now once I have the sample data, I'm feeding to JSON generator. This is another transform you can use from our toolbox, the JSON generator transform. It actually helps you to create any shape of JSON. Okay, so in order to call calendar API, you have to send JSON in a very specific format. Okay, and if you are not sure, you can always refer to Google Calendar API. So let's just search for Google Calendar API. Okay, all right, and then here we go, reference. Yeah, so you will see here different ways to create events and read back and so on, right? Basically we are trying to call this one insert. Okay, so you need to know your calendar ID. If you don't know your calendar ID, simply use primary word here, which means your default calendar. Okay, and you can use their try API section to generate desired JSON and see how it looks like. So they give you some sample here, right? Okay, so yeah, just refer this. So let's get back to our Visual Studio. So basically I need to create JSON like this, and start, and then summary is basically title of that event. Okay, and you need to supply the time zone. So what we have done here, we can actually create let's say I'm going to delete this, for example, end part, right? You can create just unbound nested element, call it start, end, and inside that you can create a date time, and this would be bound element, right? Bound element, and our value comes from end date, right? You need to call it date time, just like how API expects, right? See how it goes underneath it. Yep. And then you have to do time zone. Time zone is a static value, so static element below, call it time zone, right? And EST, that I'm just gonna put some hard-coded value. Okay, that's it. So this is how our preview looks like, right? You can arrange them however you want using this advanced editor. Yep, so that's fine. Alright, so that was just how to produce JSON, desired JSON. And you see we are doing one JSON per parent row, right? So for one event we're going to produce one JSON. You can batch it and all the other options, but yeah, for this one we're going to do this way. Alright, now let's go to the last step. Last step is basically Web API destination. And Web API destination, so I'm just going to drag it here. We are selecting the same OAuth connection we created in the earlier part. I think we created in the part 1, so please refer to the part 1 video how to create this connection manager. And we are selecting the JSON generated by this JSON generator transform here in the body, so that is dynamic, right? This is how you can use dynamic body. And my URL is hard-coded, so basically www.googleapis.com/calendar/v3 calendars, and then my calendar ID and events, right? Yep, it's a post, and that's it. And body, we don't need it because we're getting from runtime, right? If you want to test something at design time using this test request, then yes, you need to put something here, so that way you can test your design time request, right? Once design time request goes well, then you can use this runtime column, right? Another way to supply something dynamically is using columns, upstream columns, right? So there is an option here, columns, and you can use whatever you want, however you want, right? So I can just type something like this, and I can have column 1, column 2 like this, right? So you can use that option as well. Alright, so let's just run it and see what happens. So I'm just start. Okay, alright, so reading 5 events data, and that's it, 5 back, right? So now if we refresh, probably we should see something in our calendar. Okay, so let's just today. Okay, there you go. So all the events are listed here. We just created like one for 1 AM, 2 AM, sorry, just in a few minutes apart, right? Okay. Alright. So yeah, that's how you create your events program without doing any coding using SSIS SSIS. Let me show you how to read those events back, right? So, oops, sorry. So it's just running by mistake. Let's just stop it for now. Yeah. Okay, so to read events, you're gonna use JSON source from here. Here is your URL. You can again refer to API documentation. Your calendar ID is primary, And here I'm actually doing some pagination demo. So many Google APIs require pagination. So there is one parameter called max results, like how many records you want to get into one page, right? By default leave this blank, but for demo purpose I'm saying just 10 records per page, which is pretty low. But yes, you probably want to do 1,000 records, so that way, or whatever maximum supported, right? But yeah, let's see. So for demo purpose, let's just read calendar entries. Now here I'm just selecting the credentials, same OAuth connection manager. Let's select filter. So I am selecting the items node, and under items node, you see I have everything what I need. It's gonna flatten for me. Now if you notice here, there is a next page token which will show you how how to use it. But for now, let's select this items node, and now if you click preview, you can see few entries we created, right? Now it's not doing pagination, so it's gonna show more and less, but as you see, this is the some sample entries we created, right? Okay, so now if you go back to pagination tab, right, here is where you can configure various pagination strategies. Now this particular example, we have to use attribute mode, because our next page information is found in the attribute of response. Okay, and that attribute is called next page token, right? You can select it from here, and you can say next page token. Yep. And then here basically what we are saying, once you fetch this next page token, we're going to send it to the next request in the URL itself. So in the URL, it's going to append page token attribute like these equal to, and then whatever we extracted is going to be appended here. Okay, so you can see there is some instructions here, you can refer that, but that's pretty much it. So first URL may look blank like this, but if you use tool like Fiddler or some other proxy, you will see that it's calling multiple requests, right? So let's see, right? And if we have some example, let's see. Yeah, I think it's not here in the example, but let me try one more time. Read events. Okay, so while it's doing it, you can see that it's calling this and this, right? Yep. So basically it's first URL and then paginated URLs. So it will keep doing it until there is no more record. Okay, and it just read all 15 records I had in my calendar. Okay, so that's pretty much it, how to read and write data in Google Calendar using SSIS tools. Thank you for watching. Welcome to part 4 of how to call Google API series using SSIS PowerPack and ODBC PowerPack. In this video, we will talk how to call YouTube API using SSIS ETL workflow. So here is our sample workflow. Basically what we want to do is we want to upload YouTube video and set up a few properties like a video status and video file name and so on, right? So for basically it's two-step process to upload a video, and then later we will actually show you how to call Google Analytics API to get the reporting data, and then we will describe how to delete a YouTube video using drag and drop approach using this inbuilt components SSIS offers. Okay, so if you are interested to read more, please go to SSIS blog, and there is a blog post about calling YouTube API, and it describes in a pretty in-depth thing. So let's go to that. I will show you quickly. Okay, so this is just a blog post on SSIS site. So we recommend you to go through this. There are lots of tips and information about calling YouTube API. Alright, so for this demo we have our YouTube channel, and we want to upload something there. So let's just look at what are the steps there. Okay, so basically you need to refer the YouTube API documentation first. Okay, they explain you how to upload API, how upload API works. Basically, it's not a single API call. Basically, so first you need to create a session, then you can upload. You need to get the URL of the return back, and then you need to use that URL to upload something, right? So we simplified this using our SSIS product here. So basically, here is the first step, and here is the second step, right? First step is the create a session. Second step is to upload binary data of your MP4 file or whatever media file you want to upload. Okay. Now one thing is interesting here is you need to know the file size beforehand. Okay. That's where we have used this advanced file system task to read the file size here. Okay. So here is our MP4 file, and we are using get file size action here. Okay. We are storing that file size into some variable. It's in the bytes, so how many bytes we are uploading. Now let's look at this first step. So first step, our URL is like this. This is the API URL. Now make sure you have question mark upload type equal to this, and part equal to this. %2c is basically comma, encoded format, and status, right? So this is our API URL. Again, the documentation will explain you all this. Right now it should be post call, and then in the body you need to explain various things about the video you're trying to upload. So title, description, tags, category, refer to the documentation about the category number here, under which category your video falls. So privacy status, is it a private, unlisted, or public, right? And all this. So there are many more attributes you can put here to describe your video. And this body format is JSON. Now here's the interesting one. In order to name your file, you have to supply the slug. Okay, so let me open this. These are some headers you have to supply. These two are optional, but yeah, we kept it. So your slug is your file name, whatever MP4 file name you want to give, because when somebody downloads YouTube video as a file, what file will be returned back, right? So this is the file we want to use, file name. Video/star is the upload content type, and the content length, this is most important. You need to put it from some variable, right? So this is the variable we got it from the first step. Okay, that's it. And that was the first step. Second step is almost, pretty straightforward. So I need to show you one more thing here under response. So right now here, two very important things. When you start your session, you have to make sure you have this 301 302 redirect is turned off, because otherwise it will not work. So you need to check this option on advanced tab, prevent redirects. Now if you go to response setting tab, you need to configure this location header coming back from response contains the full URL you need to use for the next step. So location header, and you're going to store that URL to some variable. We already created this string data type variable, so you can use it. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the first step. Second step, we are using that URL what we stored in a variable, calling put method, and now we are actually checking this option file upload and supplying the file path, MP4 file path. Prefix has to be @. This way it understands that this file needs to be uploaded. This is not the string, but it's a file path. That's how it will treat it when you put the @ and check this. Okay, so that's it. And once you do that, it's pretty much it. One thing actually we need to do is you need to select this option here as well. Okay, so to make it simple, you can say URL from connection, and here we basically say this URL comes from this one, right? So that way you can use connection manager as well. Okay, all right, that's it. Now save this. Now let's go back to our channel, make sure there is no video there. So I'm just refreshing it and there is no video uploaded yet. So let's just run it. Okay, all right, so video is uploaded. You can see all the steps executed. This is the first, second, third step. All the steps are executed perfectly fine. This is the URL came back, right? And we actually use that to call second step. Now let's go. There you go. This is our little video, and just like how we set it, it's a private. So let's look at the second thing. So we did not talk about the read YouTube report, right? And this is again documented thoroughly in our blog post, but let me show quickly how to do that. So you're going to use JSON source. So here JSON source, okay, and you can see there is a URL here. Okay, so to call YouTube API, I mean, you can use v2 version reports, and you see that this is a report API basically. So please refer to the report API, but here is IDs, is channel is mine, means my primary channel. Metrics, these are the metrics I want to grab, you know, like how many views, estimated minutes watched, average view duration, average view percentage, subscribers gained, right? All these are my metrics. And then dimensions are like I want to slice it by day, start date is this, end date is today, right? So it has to be in this format basically. So, and if you click preview like of this thing, all the placeholders will be replaced, and you can see at the end it just puts today's date, right? So yeah, that's the basic format of a URL, and we are using the same connection manager credentials. Get is request method, and now we need to select this filter. Okay, so I'm selecting this filter, this rows. This is the array where all the data goes. Now the second thing we have to change is array transform tab. It's a two-dimensional array, and you need to select that where the column names are stored, right? So it's under column headers and name. This is how your filter should be. So that's how it will grab the column names and data, everything together. Okay, all right, so yeah, if you just a preview, I mean, I don't have any interesting data yet, but you can see, so it's just returning me some data the way it should be. Okay, all right, that's all about how to read data from YouTube channel and call Google YouTube Analytics API. There are many other things you can do which we're not going to describe. Last thing is delete video, right? So let's check the video ID. So if you click on video, that's how we got our video ID from the URL. Once I have video ID, I can simply put that in this API call. This is the delete video API call. Videos question marks ID equal to then your video ID, right? And then method is delete, and there is nothing in the body. Okay, if you click test, I mean the delete call succeed, nothing comes back. But if you go back to your channel, refresh again, video should be deleted. Alright, so that's how you call delete API for YouTube channel. Okay, alright, that's it for YouTube API, calling from SSIS using SSIS Power Pack. Thank you for watching. Welcome to part 5 of how to call Google API using SSIS Power Pack and ODBC Power Pack. So in this video we will cover how to call Google AppScript inside SSIS, okay, using API call. So if you are not sure about AppScripts, then Google AppScript is like a scripts on cloud. Okay, you can write any scripts, any functions, and invoke various way, right? So for example, if you go to Google Drive, you right click, you say more, and there is an option to create Google AppScript, right? And for demo purpose we have created a AppScript here. Okay, so if you double click, you can see the AppScript project opens up, and you can write any functions you want, right? You can supply parameters, or you can make a parameterless function as well, right? So for example, this is just a sample. We are trying to, when somebody calls this function, we are trying to update certain values in the spreadsheet with this ID. Okay, so let's see, there is a spreadsheet here for demo. We just want to update these two cells when our AppScript is called, right? Now I can call this AppScript from some macros or wherever, but to make this demo interesting, we are going to call this AppScript from SSIS, right? So first thing you need is you need to make sure you have a AppScript ID. So here there is a project key and there is a script ID, right? So just grab the script ID, save it somewhere because we will need it later on. Then you need to make sure you basically change this thing to cloud platform project, right? You need to associate this Google AppScript with some sort of a cloud project. Okay, and if you remember, we showed you how to create a project, API project. This is our sample project we created, console.developers.google.com, right? So we're going to associate with maybe this project or some other project, right? So when you go to project and then change project properties, you will see this screen. This is the number you need to associate your AppScript with, right? So you right click and paste that number and just set project, right? So yeah, so that's already associated with this project, and once you've done that, you need to publish this, deploy as API executable. Okay, and you see we deployed a few times, but yeah, just create a new and just put some comment here and update, so that will be deployed and ready to use, right? Once those steps are done, you can call this function, let's say sheet demo function, from our SSIS code. So for that you need to use these scopes. I mean, we already did use these scopes in our function, right, in our OAuth connection manager, so we're not gonna show that again, but you can refer to part 1 of our video series. But this is the scope you really need. Okay, drive.script. This can allow you to call your functions. Alright, so here is the URL we are using, basically scripts.googleapis.com/v1/scripts, and then your script ID and colon and then run. Okay, then it has to be post request method, and then you need to put this function colon sheet. So there are a few other things you can put. You can supply the parameters to your function. We're not covering that part, but you refer to your API documentation how to supply parameters. Okay, for now we're just saying, hey, we want to execute this sheet demo function. That's it, right? So once we do that, see what happens. So the function should update our sheet here. Alright, so almost there. It's executing. And that's it. Let's see what happens here. Okay, voila. So values are there. It executed our AppScript from SSIS without doing any coding. And if you are curious what is going on, see, this is the sheet ID. We got it from our sheet, URL in the, sorry, not this one, this is the sheet ID. We got it from the URL and just use that in the AppScript. I mean, we get the instance of workbook, then we get the sheet, and then we just start writing to sheet. That's it. Okay, you can pretty much do anything you want. There is a huge library of JavaScript in JavaScript library. So just read more about AppScripts. I mean, there are lots of use case and it would be exciting. So thank you for watching. This was a conclusion of all our 5 different videos about how to call Google APIs inside SSIS or ODBC Power Pack. Thank you. Bye bye.